Good evening, good evening. Welcome, welcome, welcome this evening to our National Action Network Youth in College 2024 post-Martin Luther King Day virtual huddle. We are excited to be here tonight, and I'm excited to join 8 panelists and to welcome them to National Action Network's platform. Some of them are very familiar with them. You will recognize them as soon as you see them. They are some of our National Action Network Youth in College leadership and some of our national staff and leadership as well. We are also excited to have some special guests tonight from other organizations, but they will introduce themselves. And I'm excited to be joined tonight to host with me. For those who don't know me, sorry, I should have started with that. I'm Ashley Sharpton. I'm the founder of National Action Network's Youth Huddle, and I'm the chief advisor to National Action Network Youth and College Department. NAN's Youth and College Department is led by Felipe Dosa, who is joining us tonight as the co-host. You're gonna hear from him very shortly, and he's gonna introduce everyone tonight. He's also a student of Morehouse College, but he will also introduce himself. We're going to start tonight, as we start everything at NAN, with prayer. Patrice Perry is going to join us. Sister Patrice is the assistant to our executive vice president and general counsel, Attorney Michael Hardy, and she's also the lead advisor of NAN's Youth Huddle. Patrice?
Good evening, and thank you so much. I'm honored to be here. Let's start with our scripture lesson for this evening. It's coming from Joshua, the 1st chapter, verses 7 through 9. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all of the instructions Moses gave you. Do not deviate from them, turning either to the right or to the left. Then you will be successful in everything that you do. Study the book of instruction continually. Meditate on it day and night, so you will be sure to obey everything written in it. Only then will you prosper and succeed in all that you do. This is my command. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid to be discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Let us pray. Most gracious and wise God, we pause today just to tell you thank you. God, thank you for the MLK week. Thank you for the holiday that we observe. But oh God, help us not to let the dream die. God, we ask you to touch each and every leader on this call today. Everyone that's joining, God, help them that as they signed on to this Zoom or wherever they're zooming in from, that once they zoom out, God, they'll be in a whole new place, a whole new mindset, a renewed spirit, a renewed way of thinking, a renewed way to bring back to their communities. God, we thank you today. We thank you for the visionary Ashley Sharpton, the co-visionary Dominic Sharpton. God, thank you for each and every leader. We have people from Washington, from Chicago, from Syracuse, from Atlanta. God, thank you. Thank you today. We ask you to be with us. Control the conversation. God, help somebody live and just one person. Life has changed. We've done our job. God, we thank you. Continue to give our young people strength when they feel discouraged. Continue to uplift them when they feel down. Continue to help them get self-control and self-esteem. Help them to continue to talk to you, God, in their quiet hour. For this, we know, continue to watch over our president and founder. God, we are in a serious time, 2024. But we know that many things are happening, but we know that you are still in control. You are still God. You're still King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And we ask you to do what you always do and be God. So this we ask in nothing but your matchless name, and all of your children said, amen. God bless you.
Amen. Amen and amen. Thank you, Evangelist. Thank you. All right, now we will have our welcoming remarks and our Black History Fact from our Huddle Vice Chair, Dominic Sharpton, who's also our National Director of Membership and Special Events.
Thank you so much, Ashley, and good evening to everyone. Certainly, it's great to see so many youth leaders from across the country join us tonight. We are certainly in a pivotal moment in our history, in our country, and what better way to step forward into 2024 than to have our youth leaders, those who are on the ground working every day to uplift and amplify issues that pertain to young people, be that voice and be at the table and be of the table as we step forward to prosper and to progress our people in a meaningful way. Thank you to Ashley Sharpton, my little sister, and our visionary who has convened us today, and for all of you who are working respectfully in your lanes as we are really working diligently every day on the ground to make sure that we resonate our voices and our action. Today's Black History Fact on today, January the 20th in 1838, the African American Registry acknowledged January 20th of 1838 as Weeksville's founding date. James Weeks found himself a free Black man when slavery ended in New York State in the year of 1838. He purchased land from another free Black man named Henry Thompson. And this sale in and of itself established the beginnings of a thriving, self-sufficient African American enclave in Brooklyn, New York, called Weeksville. The African American Registry acknowledges January 20th, 1838 as its founding date, and slaves escaping from the South found a home in Weeksville. For Black people in New York, it was the safest place in the city to have a quality of life away from racism. And by the year of 1850, it was the second largest independent Black community in pre-Civil War America. Weeksville had its own churches, schools, businesses, newspaper, the Freedmen's Torchlight, and almost 500 families lived in Weeksville. Dr. Susan Smith McKinney Stewart, the first female Black physician in New York, was one prominent citizen who took residence there. And by the mid-1950s, the community had been forgotten. But on today, the Weeksville Society is active in restoring old buildings and also holding events educating the current surrounding areas on its legacy. So we want to definitely pay homage to Weeksville and all of the amazing African Americans who came from that parsonage and in that residence. And on today, we remember that day of all days in our African American history as we pay it forward and as we keep moving forward in action. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dominique Sharpton, for that information, for that Black History Fact. If you are familiar with our NAN Youth Huddle Monday program, this is our 10th year in existence. So if you joined us any of those Mondays, you know we start off after prayer with our Black History Fact, which is very important to us. So make sure if you do your own group or you gather up, it's a lot of huddlers across the nation who do their own huddles, not just on Monday nights, but you have your own special night. Make sure you have that Black History Fact and make sure you teach young people and the elders, because some of them don't know their history, their Black History Facts, because in order to know where we're going, we got to know where we've been, right? All right, let's get this panel going. We're going to welcome Felivi Dosa, our National Youth and College Director of the National Action Network, to introduce our panelists. Felivi.
Hello, everyone. My name is Felivi Dosa. I'm the National Youth and College Director for National Action Network, also a student at Morehouse. I'm 21 years old, originally born from Togo, West Africa, but live in Harlem, New York. So I'll pass it to Usman to start off as the next panelist to introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. Happy Huddle Friday today, I guess, because it's not Monday. My name is Usman Diallo. I'm a senior at the University at Albany by way of Harlem, New York, and I'm a descendant from parents who's from Guinea, that's in West Africa. And I'll popcorn it to Monet.
Hey everyone, good evening. Hope everyone is staying safe with this weather. My name is Monet Smith. I am 23. I'm originally from PG County, Maryland, outside of DC, but based in Brooklyn, New York. I specialize in criminal justice and criminal justice reform and criminology. I am founder for my own nonprofit in Brooklyn, New York, known as SJI, Society's Justice Innovation Interventions, and we'll talk about that more. And I'm currently in grad school at NYU Wagner, getting my master's in public policy, nonprofit management. And yeah, I will pass it to Cameron.
Thank you, Monet. My name is Cameron Barnes. I'm grateful to serve as the National Youth Director at Rainbow Push. Sort of kind of like a sister brother kind of organization with National Action Network. But of course, always grateful to be with the NAN Youth Huddle, with many of my peers. This is family, really. This is not even like we're seeing each other virtually, but also working now as a community coordinator for Chicago Public Schools. And just happy, of course, to again be with my NAN family. I'm a bootleg member of NAN, you all. I need to send in my membership.
You're official. You're official.
And I will pass it to Alicia.
Hi, everyone. I am Alicia Butler. I serve as the Health and Wellness Policy Advisor for the National Action Network in the Washington, D.C. office. I am not in college anymore, but I went to the Southern University and A&M College in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And are we still saying our age? I don't think so, but I brought attention to it. I'm 27 years old. I'm happy to be here to shed some insight on this conversation, and thank you, Huddle, for having me. Oh, and I will pass it to Brenda.
Thank you so much, Alicia. And thank you, Nan, for the invite, Nan Huddle for the invite. My name is Brenda Morrison. I serve as the National Advocacy Chair for the National Urban League Young Professionals. So I'm here by way of the National Urban League, which is a legacy organization that has very much been in the fight along with NAN and all of our sister organizations. I am actually coming by way to you all of Florida. So I work at a community foundation down in Miami. But community organizing, community issues, and building rapport and encouraging people to become their own advocates is very near and dear to me. And so being a part of this conversation means a lot. And I'm looking forward to what we're going to be discussing tonight. And I will popcorn it over to Tay.
Hi, everybody. Thank you guys for having me tonight. My name is Tay El-Hindi. I'm a Minneapolis, Minnesota-based organizer and activist, as well as the assistant to the national field team at National Action Network. I'm 26 years old. I'm very happy to be here and very excited for the conversation tonight. Oh, and I'll pass it to Christian.
Okay, sorry. There we go. Hi, everyone. I'm Christian Matthew. I am one of the newest members here to National Action Network Youth and College Division, but I'm honored to be here. I am the youngest member, let me say that, here tonight on the Zoom, on my way to college, not in college yet and not done with college, but everybody else with all these fancy degrees and whatnot, but it's all right. I'll get there later on. I got time. But I'm honored to be here, and thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I believe that was all our panelists. All right, are we ready to begin? Believe it? Let's go. I'm gonna go to the general view so everyone can be seen. So just letting you know the camera, you're on camera, so you can be seen. Believe it?
All right, so I'm going to first start off. If you guys had just seen the recent news, Spelman College just received 100 million. It's the largest donation, single straight donation from anybody to an HBCU. So I wanted to ask the question, in the content of economic support, what specific policies or proposals can be advocated to address, student debt, increase funding to HBCU, and promote economic equality in underserved communities? And anybody can go first.
Maybe I can start, break this ice a little bit. First of all, very grateful that that kind of donation is coming to our HBCUs. Kudos to the women of Spelman, who I know will do great with that kind of a donation. But I think that in the area of economic support, what we've got to do is continue to advocate for policies such as the student loan debt forgiveness. You know, that's a hot topic. All of us know. And even our brother Wisdom Cole over at NAACP, they've done a lot of work with the national call for student loan debt forgiveness. But more than that also, because if I may address the elephant in the room, I'm a product of Central State University. It's a lesser known HBCU. And a lot of times I hate it because when we have these kinds of headlines, the first thing everyone says is, well, they always go to Spelman, they always go to Howard, they always go to Morehouse, come to the other smaller schools. And that may be, but we also have to do our own kind of advocacy for increased funding for HBCUs on a state and federal level, not just from independent private donors. We've got to have more programs like Central State being a land grant institution. We've got to advocate for more kind of programs like that, because that is going to unlock more funding from the state level and not just from the private donor level. So land grant institutions are wonderful, but we need more programs like the land grant kind of program. Not only that, we got to target economic development initiatives and community investment programs. Listen, I think equitable access to education can include equitable access to trades as well. And I don't think trades get talked about enough, simply because trades, everybody doesn't go to college. Some people, my brother went to college for a year and he didn't go back. That was not his thing. He got a trade. He's doing well. The fact is that a trade can help you to stimulate the economy. When you get a trade and now you're making $60 to $70 an hour as a plumber, as an electrician, as a pipe fitter, you're now making a livable wage. You can make up to 6 figures without a college degree. And what you're going to do with that 6 figures? You're going to spend money in your community, and you're going to stimulate the economy right where you live. And so there's a lot of different economic policies, I think, that we can do, starting with advocating for more state-funded programs to our HBCUs, but then also uplifting things like trades and other alternatives that give access to livable wages in America. And I ain't gonna talk a whole lot because we got a whole bunch of panels, but y'all know I'll start. I'm a preacher like Patrice. Yeah, once I start, I won't stop.
To piggyback off of Cameron, this conversation before the thing with Spelman came up, we already had this conversation in Huddle on a Monday. And so I've been me and Giselle, we've been leading Huddle while Usman and Felivi have been away. But part of the problem that I think even what Cameron was going into is that there is no funding on the state or federal level for HBCUs. Unlike PWIs that get all the money, from grants and everything else, there are laws that have been put in place for years to stop HBCUs from receiving funding that other schools would get. And I'm even seeing it now as I've already gone through the college process, and I know everybody else here has, but I'm going through it and have been receiving acceptances, and one denied, but it's okay. But the problem that I had was that all of my PWIs, I was receiving scholarships back to back to back to back. But then when it came down to the HBCUs, I received the scholarship, but it was not on the same level as a PWI. So I think that is also a conversation that we need to have. Not only is there we're getting accepted to these schools, but we cannot afford to go. So the government needs to do what they need to do to give grants. I think that HBCUs need a lot of grants. I mean, even from 2020 to now, HBCUs have seen a surplus of applicants and have received a surplus of people that they are accepting. But most of these people have to end up taking out a whole bunch of loans that they are not able to pay back, and then you got to pay back with interest and a whole bunch of other things. So I agree with Cameron. I think that there needs to be more talk on the state and federal level about how can we get these grants into the hands of the HBCUs that are ultimately going to trickle down to those that are going to these schools.
Real quick before Ashley asks the next question, I think, of course, we're focusing on the state and federal level, but we also have to look into ourselves and organizations that are helping, from UNCF, Thurgood Marshall College Fund, That's, shoot, without them, I wouldn't even be at Morehouse. And I think, as much as of course, we got to put pressure on the government, but we also have to support our own that are doing the work, providing these scholarships, providing these opportunities for students to even get a chance to even get in the doors of these HBCUs. So that should be something we should definitely look into and seeing how we can help them and all. But go ahead.
I mean, I also want to jump in real quick. It's not even that our it's not even that
The connection.
HBCUs did less. Yeah, even
It's not working.
I think he just stepped.
Does anybody else want to try while he gets his connection together? Does anybody else want to answer that question?
I just want to say that I think I agree with the push around state and local government and even federal government pushing dollars towards HBCUs, but I think it's a both and where the business community also plays a role, community foundations play a role in also stepping up too. I think having both in terms of getting donations from foundations in addition to government funding can help to address the issue. And I think by combining the two, or even, ensuring that the two hands are talking in the same way, allows for more innovative ways of how the funds can even be used and how different programming programming and opportunities can be afforded to students at HBCUs.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead, Monet.
Also, like really quick adding on to that, I also think we need to realize the purpose and why we do things like that, such as investing as HBCUs. I feel like a lot of people who don't have a full understanding of the complexities of education, like the lives of Black and brown bodies, especially those who grew up in kind of HBCU like environments, I call it, in terms of like being in a predominantly Black environment, and just important that those education institutions have. I feel like we need to start looking at it as a way, like I think Kim mentioned earlier, in terms of like a way for us to further the Black and brown dollar in terms of reinvesting the economy. But I also see it as a way of kind of like bridging the gap of economic and social mobility stemming from, what we didn't get in reparations. Because that's obviously one way to add wealth to our communities for like generational wealth. But I also think we would see more people who are more in support of the communities if we focus more efforts into that, because a lot of kids, are educated and was a strive for more HBCUs just because of like the psychological impacts that comes from, the PWI environment. That's like a whole nother factor in itself that, we often don't take into account. So I think focusing on that, and also when we focus on that, like state grants and community investment, like Phoebe said, in terms of investment in organizations that are doing the work to help kids like reach that place, but I also think adding more of like the innovative side to it. I know briefly for me, I went to undergrad at Penn State at PWI, and like a big part of their dollars is the economic business model of college football. And it's like that's a whole business model that comes from that sport and having a contract with like news broadcasters like ABC and ESPN and all those broadcasters, and that gives them dollars. So it's like it's a lack of focus that leads us to not having a strong economic business model with a lot of things with that too.
Thank you, Monet. Usman, do you want to give us the final answer for that question?
Yes, what I was going to add, or no?
Keep going, try it.
Well, what I was going to add is not only we're not receiving adequate funds from government, it's that oftentimes when we're granted these opportunities to receive those funds, the schools in particular don't get them. For example, Lincoln University was one of these schools. The state allocated or allotted like $19 million for them, and it's been frozen. It was frozen since June, and they have to petition, do actions and things of that nature, while other PWIs are thriving, stuff like that. So it's not only that we have to fund these institutions, but we have to make sure that they're receiving the funds. There are a lot of land grant-based institutions who are not receiving the funds based off the taxes they pay. And also, I think we need to place an importance of why we have HBCUs. We've just seen the recent news where Dr. Claudine Gay was stripped of her presidency at Harvard University, and people were calling it a diversity hire. We see this attack on DI, a constant attack. And so if this was our own institutions where we place prestige on it, things like this wouldn't have happened or it wouldn't have affected us as it did.
Absolutely right. Felivi, that goes right into our next question.
Hello, you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So to the next question, if some of you may know, every Thursday we've been doing protests about DEA in New York. So those in New York, if you can, definitely try to see if you could go there. Before we left, Usman and I were there. But to uphold DEI, what specific actions can youth activists take to influence organize policies and practices ensuring diversity, equity, and inclusion are not just talked about, but are actually implemented?
Can I start? Okay, I'm going to start because I've been losing my voice every Thursday down there chanting, against this Bill Ackman. So let me start while I have my voice. But to that effect, I think that really what we need to do is, as Rev said, what Rev started with the picketing has been influential. And I'm saying that because this has been going across the nation, especially when we first started. There were people, my cousins in Atlanta and Florida, saw it on their local news station. And I said, what? And, normally I would get that from cousins in New York, but when you start having people from across the nation reach out to you, that's when you know that you're really making an impact that people are seeing. But to what you were saying, I think that as youth activists, what we need to do is, as Rev told us, that what really hurts people is their pockets. When Bill Ackman he's an investor, and that's where most of his money comes from. I had to do research on him. I didn't really know who he was, but he's an investor. And what you have to do is that as we are going to some of these schools, and it's good, Penn State, New York University, but what we need to do is that we need to stop going to some of these schools, because these are the same schools that he is investing in, that is also putting money back into his pocket. Black people need to also stop going to Harvard. Harvard is a good school, but I personally have my opinion on Harvard. Harvard is a beautiful school. It's an older campus. I mean, I don't really see the big thing about going to Harvard, but some people do, and that's all right. But the ultimate goal that we really want to do is hit these people where it really hurts, and that is their pockets. So when you stop going to these schools, they lose funding on the amount of people that go to their school. It's just like a regular school. You get paid for the amount of people that go to your school. So you need to do that. But then also youth activists really need to also not participate in certain businesses that do not have diversity, equity, and inclusion. Because if we start working for some of these businesses that are saying that they're now going to stop the certain percentage, because I know with DEI, there needed to be a certain percentage of minority. And people think that DEI only affects Black people. That is not true. It affects women. It affects every minority community, with the exception of white people, because white people are not considered minority. They're considered the majority. So I don't think that this is just an African-American issue. This is an issue that is going to affect people, but let them all be asleep now, because they're sleeping and they're rocking themselves to sleep, but then they're going to need to be woke, because in 2 or 3 years, when they see what this really did, they're going to wake up and see that this is not just a Black people issue, but this is an issue that is affecting everybody. So I think it's time that we wake up and we start hitting these people where it hit, and that is in their pocket. And we're going to continue to protest and fight until it happens.
Amen goes right there. And salute to you, Christian, because you have been on the front line since we started DEI Thursdays. Thanks to you. One of the youngest voices out there, if not the youngest voice out there thus far. All right, any other panelists want to answer that question about DEI?
No? Oh no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, I definitely feel very strongly about that. And I think it is also, to Christian's point, I really honestly, I wrote a whole kind of book, because I think in general, in terms of now, it's like our generation, or just our era in general, just gets too comfortable, you know, when we have certain issues. And sometimes it's just overburdened in terms of like having to deal with so many issues and seeing more things than we would have saw like in the 60s per se. But I think we lose our momentum in being strategic towards fighting because we get too complacent. And I think in general, like we need to use the power that we have now more than we did back then, in terms of voices and people in specific power and more knowledge and more skills and more connections to do so. And we need to use that for specific like strategic methods. And with that, with DEI, like I honestly think that we just need to step on a lot of these private entities' necks in terms of like hitting their pockets and hitting them where it hurts. Because in terms of like diversity, like obviously from their business standpoint, which a lot of them won't know because they specialize in one specific area and not generally, but diversity actually helps their bottom line and helps their numbers. Like it's factually been like shown by studies that a diverse bodies in the workspace, you know, elevates the amount of things that you're able to reduce. But I think similar to what was said earlier, I really think we need to use the collective voices and like forming boycotts in terms of if an organization or company or private entity is not meeting the demands and helping serve the community that it uses to benefit from dollar-wise, like we should not be investing in that. And I think we've seen now more than ever the strength of what our collective strategic voices and dollars can influence, like such as like Starbucks and McDonald's. They lost billions. They're on the ranks of bankruptcy, and that obviously was for something very serious, but like there's a lot of corporations that are also doing serious harm to the community that we don't, you know, put as much strategic methods in terms of like boycotting with that. So I think boycotting, but I think it needs to come, like we can't just boycott everything, you know, because then we kind of lose our voice and then it gets played, and then, you know, the parties like to play kind of putting that in a specific lane in itself. But I think if it's strategic and we collectively have a plan such as they did in the 60s and with DEI specifically, and I'm definitely down, you know, I'm in the New York community. So anyone that like wants to work on this action wise moving forward, especially NAN, one thing that I was thinking with this, I think it needs to be basically what I was thinking was like a corporate dollar. Like I think based like corporate reinvestment in the community. And I think that corporations should be like almost mandated from the community to invest in certain programs, you know, or invest this sort of thing, like not just hire, you know, a diverse body, like that's good and that's fine and dandy, but like what are you actually physically doing to impact the community in which you reside in? And we see a lot of like gentrification, all these new fancy buildings and like corporations or businesses there, which is good, but like how are you improving the community in which you now take space in? So I think kind of pushing it on their necks in terms of like, we're not going to shop with you. We're not going to give you, you know, your dollars. We're going to hurt your profit and your bottom lines if you are not basically reinvesting in these communities, such as working with organizations and nonprofits and other, you know, people that are doing the work on the ground. So I think that's definitely the best way for us to kind of get involved with that moving forward.
Excellent point. Corporate reinvestment. Absolutely right. Brenda, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I wanted to say we as youth advocates can really leverage our voice of ensuring that the community at large understands like their role in how DEI practices are taking away and kind of discriminating opportunities, you know, for better growth. And the reason why I say that is because if the everyday common day-to-day person can see themselves in the fight, then they will figure out a way how to advocate for the issues themselves. Someone made a brilliant point to me thinking about my space in Florida, where we have, you know, I feel like even started this whole DEI trend of even kind of disparaging it. And so looking at the fight with our Florida legislative body really being like a super majority on one side. And so they have really like been taking this fight for years to where now you want to not only limit what DEI can do, but you want to rebrand it to something else. And then another legislative session is going to be trying to take away what you rebranded it to be. And so what they're trying to rebrand it to be, it's the same wording that day-to-day folks can see themselves in, but they don't, there's a disconnect between seeing themselves and the resources that come from opportunities that would be brought out of DEI. And I think that even from the lens of me representing even a National Urban League Young Professionals, and we're like between 21 to 40, there are a lot of people who are like almost DEI is in the spaces that they're in. So it's somewhat to where they're seeing their space to create impact being removed. And I think we, not only just the young professionals, but the community as a whole plays a role in figuring out a way how to become their own advocates, see themselves in the fight in themselves, and find a way how to advocate against it. And so I feel like our role is to teach the people to see that. It can't be mad at people for not seeing it because they're about their day-to-day Jane Doe and James Doe type of going about things. But we have a role to be able to show them that this is your role to play in it, even if it's taking them to a community meeting, probably their first community meeting. But that is how you start the process for them to realize it, because every year the certain parties kind of have their agenda already figured out. And it's already at the table, the decision table already ready to be marked out. And we're the last to kind of figure it out. We're the last to figure it out. So the programming that you're depending on to provide dollars to help you keep a roof over your head is going to be dissipated because of this entire type of fight.
Amen. It's a great point, Brenda. That's a great point. And that brings us to our next question. But does anybody want to answer that before I go to the next question?
Just real quick.
Sorry.
As we was talking about money, I'm just remembering with MLK, the Montgomery boycott. The reason why it was so successful is because they stopped pushing the black dollar in the bus system. And even though it took about, I believe, a year or so, at the end they were allowed to now send any bus. But I also wanted to just kind of challenge a little bit with what Christian said. I think it was around like maybe we shouldn't go to Harvard. And to be honest, I don't know if I completely agree, because when there's certain things regarding education or whatever in this country, a lot of times they look into Harvard. So for example, when COVID first happened, Harvard was the first one to close their schools. As a result, every other school moved forward and said, all right, we're going to close our schools down. And so for me, I'm more of the idea of maybe we should look into the Black students there at Harvard. I'm down to reach out to see if we could create even a NAN chapter down in Harvard, because at the end of the day, it's not always about, it's about also taking up space. Yes, there's a way to maybe hit them financially for sure, but it's important for us to take up space, at Morehouse, at Spelman, all these HBCUs, a lot of the times they tell us, all right, you go here for undergrad, but you go all the way to these Ivy Leagues and you kick butt, you stand up, you do what you have to do. So it's just to give you a different mindset of like, listen, maybe sometimes, of course there's ways to step back, but there's ways to go in and take up space and speak up. So.
Definitely. Okay, so going back to what Brenda said, Brenda, we're going to Florida. So I'm going to ask you this question. I'm going to bring it to you, to Cameron, and to Alicia. So basically, since you kind of, Brenda, you kind of hit it to talk about Florida and talk about where DEI kind of started. One of the issues in Florida that everyone has heard of is how they're trying to cancel Black history, and they're banning Black history, forbidding it legally. And that's a big issue in this election as well. So the question is, how can the panel work towards implementing a standardized curriculum for teaching comprehensive Black history in schools? And are there specific policies or initiatives that can support this effort? Again, how can the panel work towards implementing a standardized curriculum for teaching comprehensive Black history in schools? And are there specific policies or initiatives that can support this effort? And that is for Brenda, Cameron, and Alicia. Ooh. Not in that order, whoever would like to answer it first.
Well, I'll say on my end, it is pretty, my first reaction to that question would definitely be to even very much go the local route, because oftentimes it's so polarized up at the top in our state, in state legislature efforts, that you try to like leverage the influence that you have, and the best one that you might have is the local one, because that's the one that you can go to their office and you will try to see them about a particular issue. If you got somebody in your state who's your state rep, it's a little bit harder to do. But I'm a little stumped on the question, if I'm honest, because even just looking at how the makeup of our local bodies are, and it's particularly how our local school boards are, it's a lot of mangling even happening there, to where like when you're trying to push through something on a very local level like that, it's a bit difficult. And so where I find my inspiration and optimism is building coalition with those community organizations who connect directly with youth. Because that is a lever of strength, to where it's not, you have a lot more flexibility in terms of how you dictate how the students that you mentor get introduced to Black history topics. I've found myself very focused on even connecting with somebody who's a local archivist in my community to teach students about the names on a street. So I'm in my area, there's a street that is named after the first Black doctor in our county. And so our students from various organizations are able to be aware of that, and even are aware of even the first Black high school in our area. That is at least where we can kind of control the narrative a bit, and at least share with youth in the community that your history didn't start from a particular place that other people are trying to tell you. And so that you walk around knowing historical figures, you walk around with some bit of pride that, to kind of counteract what the media and even some of what legislators are doing. Now, how can I make that policy? That's now that's a hard kind of territory to kind of walk around. And it doesn't mean that I encourage people to not continue to have discourse with your local electeds. It will take a while to do so, but in the interim, really use what you have as your leverage. We all kind of convene having these national organizations that have then sublets of like regional aspects, and even like then city aspects and state aspects, really leveraging that to then play our role of how we ensure that they know about their history. I know somebody else might have a contradictory type of view, but it's a little bit tough to standardize stuff with the mangling that we have legislatively wise.
You gotta
Brenda,
keep it real. All opinions are welcome.
I completely agree with Brenda. I think that it is the role of our community leaders to continue to amplify our stories and make sure that we're creating and working with communities that are already doing this work, ensuring that our stories are being told by us in place. I don't believe that I've ever gotten the right story if we're looking at the history of my education system. I grew up in Seattle, Washington, which there are not a lot of people that look like me, which means a lot of educators were not telling stories where I was properly represented or my people were properly represented. And I think the first time that I was getting some of the truth was when I went to my HBCU. And a lot of people were just like, well, why are you all teaching African-American lit at an HBCU? It's counterproductive. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's necessary to ensure that we're reclaiming our stories and telling them, because history is told by the victors. So we have to make sure that we are reclaiming our stories and telling them the correct way. I was literally talking to an organization where we were talking about doing some community work with reading books to kids during Black History Month, something like that. And I'm like, well, let's look at the banned book list that they're putting out and circulating, and let's see what books off of that list can we use to not only get donated to make sure these stories are continuously being circulated in our communities, but make sure they're still being told. People know who a James Baldwin is and a Toni Morrison is and the Audre Lorde is, and how all of their collective efforts back then are kind of setting the stage for what we're seeing again and again and again. So I really think it's a community response versus an institutional education response, because I feel like I've gotten the most watered down versions of so many, even the way enslavement is told. Our history started before enslavement, and I think it's important to note that and have that told by the very people that we're trying to reach. So I'm not sure essentially what policy could look like. I don't even know necessarily if there's any policy that can stop that. But what I do think we should do is try to find a counteractive response. And that starts with the community.
I couldn't agree with Brenda and Alicia all the more. Alicia mentioned history is told by the victors. I had to imprint that one in my mind, because we have to continue to tell our story. Period and point blank. We have to do it in a sense from pain to progress, from amplifying our contributions that we've made to society, and even amplifying from the weary years to the silent tears, as the song is said. As it's been articulated, even when we put it in the hands of those. So say, for instance, our oppressor says, wonderful, I will teach you Black history. Do you expect him to teach you the real Black history? So we're going to have to take control of this ourselves. I'll tell you one thing. I had never read the Emancipation Proclamation. I didn't know that January 1st could be interpreted also as Freedom Day. And we can go into a whole lot of different things, even in the sense of talking about Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. I had to then go and find out. If it wasn't until January the 1st, then Reverend Jackson, I was sitting in his office and he said, Cameron, have you ever read the Emancipation Proclamation? I said, no, Reverend, I haven't. He had it printed out and made me sit right there in his office and read it. And then I realized that, I said, wait a minute. First of all, Reverend, they didn't even free all the slaves in all the states from the Emancipation Proclamation. Secondly, they just made it so that we could go to the war so that we can continue to fight. So, Rev, Abraham Lincoln didn't free us, we freed us. Because if we wouldn't have fought the way we fought, then the Civil War would not have been won, because the Union was already, they had so much, the Confederacy had gotten as far as Gettysburg, and the Union was losing. And Abraham Lincoln said, I got to make a choice. We got to free the slaves up here, or at least down there, because then when they go and fight, they're fighting literally for their freedom. So I think, obviously, NAN, Rainbow Push, NAACP, all of us, Transformative Justice Coalition, everybody is doing a good work. We have to do a little bit more. We have to tell our story. And then I think policy-wise, as is mentioned, we could talk a little bit about the gray area of what the policy could look like, but I have to have it to start with the debunking of the myth that there is a such thing as critical race theory. There is no such thing as critical. Now, that's my opinion. You don't have to subscribe to that opinion, but Cameron's opinion is there is no such thing as critical race theory. There's only American history, be that raw and uncut as it may be, because you want to talk about how the fact that, well, it's critical race theory because it makes other people feel uncomfortable about something that they did not do, but they still benefit on that which was done by their ancestors, and we're still oppressed on what was done to our ancestors. So we can still keep the oppression, but you can't take the fact that, oh, somebody gonna feel bad, go home. There's no such thing as critical race theory. And I think policy has to look like debunking that myth, letting American history be American history, whatever that looks like, because at the end of the day, we don't know what every teacher is doing in their classroom anyway. We don't know what teacher is grading on a scale that has a kind of something behind it, that, you know, you're failing students because of whatever it is. We can't monitor every classroom in America, but we can monitor our own household. We can monitor that which we are ascribing to in our extracurriculars. We need organizations to continue talking about what the Emancipation Proclamation looked like, what these different things from slavery to sedition to secession to white supremacy. I mean, all these different things going to continue to be talked about at these kind of Saturday morning action rallies. If you're in New York, if you're in Chicago on Saturday morning, you can come by 930 East 50th Street. We have to tell these stories, and whatever policy is going to look like, all I can say is it needs to be absent of critical race theory, because that doesn't exist.
That is interesting. I see Christian itching. I don't know if you wanted to say something in response, and I see Felipe with his hands up, and Brenda. I also know that story about Lincoln not freeing the slaves. Reverend Sharpton often tells that story at the Saturday rally. Felipe and Brenda, I'm going to add you in.
Yeah, I was just thinking, it was just an idea that popped in my head. I was thinking about the AP test that we all had to take, those college level tests. Everybody knows about AP history. The college level test that if you pass, it will be considered a credit that you could use later on in school. So I was this suggestion of if we could look at that test, right? If the history, what they're saying, and, you know, if it's correct. If it's not, and they're saying, okay, this is when slavery was, this is when it was, then we can do some type of push against it, saying that this test is not even accurate. So now using that, we go to other schools, colleges, and say you should not be accepting this test as a credit at all. Now putting a push on, I think AP is, I don't know if it's College Board that owns the test or whatever. Yes, it
it's
is. So
College
now
Board.
now you could go to the College Board and say these schools will not be taking this credit unless you change the test and make sure that is accurate. I think that's one great step to now push to say, hey, listen, like, and it's not only just HBCUs, for example, that won't take the credit. We could talk to PWIs and whatever and have conversation. But I feel like that is just one great step of way of putting pressure on saying that this history you're teaching is not even right. So
Gotcha.
I don't think we got to stop at the AP level. Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. Osa.
I don't think we got to stop at the AP level because I've been in AP courses too. And that was the first time I learned that Christopher Columbus did not found America or stuff like that. So if I had to get all the way to the 11th grade to learn that in school, then there's something wrong prior to me even reaching AP. There's and Cameron, I want to offer a little bit pushback. You said that critical race theory doesn't exist. It does, and it was founded by us legal scholars, and it was a legal study to show that hey, Black people and minorities have been disadvantaged throughout all of the systems, whether that may be it legal, whether that may be it through housing or any other system. And it's not just based off individual biases or an individual, but it's a systemic thing that attacks every single Black person. So what I want to offer is that we can't allow our oppressors to co-opt our language and take it and tell us what we're allowed to use and what we're not allowed to use. What we have to do is explain what critical race theory is. While they could make bumper stickers and make, cute little videos and say, critical race theory makes your kid feel bad or is racist at that, we have to take the time to unlearn what we learned already because they gave us miseducation. And if we read Carter G. Woodson's book, if you can control how a person thinks, then you don't have to worry about his actions. And for a lot of times, they have been miseducating us a whole lot. And if we allow them to continue that, even while we're being these activists, even as activists, we have to unlearn a lot of things too. And we have to take from Reverend Jesse Jackson, Reverend Al Sharpton, and use our African oral tradition to learn some of these stories because they're never going to be in the books that we are reading in schools.
I was waiting for that rebuttal. I'm not on the panel, so I can't really give my opinion, but I was waiting. All right, Usman.
See, this is why I like dealing with NAN. I'm sorry, Tay, I know your hand is up. This is why I like dealing with NAN, because you always learn something.
Before we go on, I just want to salute to those who are online watching on Facebook. Thank you to those who are watching from all over the country. Please continue to share. We're going to be taking your questions around 6:40. So please write them in the chat. Patrice is going to be monitoring them and she will share them in the Zoom for us. All right, sorry. I don't know if Cameron wanted to respond or Brenda wanted to share.
Yeah, just real quick. Two things that I wanted to lift up is to the person who is locally in your community trying to tell the story about your community. Like, do not look down at them, like look up to them. And I say that from the perspective of somebody who works at a place that funds people locally. Like, you tend to think that, oh, like you just look down as them as the middleman. You don't really look down them as nothing. But in a time as this, what they are doing, the work that they're doing is just as important, if not more. And so, like, do not underestimate like the value that they have to bring towards the community. And to Cameron's point, it's about the policy, and I wanted to uplift it a bit, where a lot of we have to at some point be able to push back in terms of how they shape policy to try to protect what happened in the past. Some of them may even not want to maybe acknowledge that they might be in some ways connected to somebody who was involved with some of the acts, and that brings shame. And so, like, you do no justice to like those who are going to end up having to deal with the circumstances that you're putting in place through laws doing that. We have to kind of for America to like truly realize its true potential, we need to kind of acknowledge the elephant in the room, the amount of elephants in the room, and then be able to then look at what can be done ahead. But is it an ugly history? Yes, but it is not. Doesn't have to be the totality of what tomorrow could look like. And so like it's a lot around culture and makeup and all of that. But I think that could be an opportunity for new folks who want to, be the electeds and all of that, to kind of have that perspective and be the ones to push back on what's currently happening. Because if you don't, then you will continue to keep on having, they could die, those who are the propagators of this type of rhetoric, they could die tomorrow and new ones will pop up. But we on the other side of it, there's an opportunity to at least be the ones to kind of push the narrative of, yes, it's an ugly history, but we need to get towards tomorrow as well.
Say that. Felivi?
Hey.
Anybody else before we move on to the next?
Yeah, if I could.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that Cameron said something about we're doing a lot and we need to do more. I think we also have a responsibility as organizers and community leaders to try and make this information accessible. We can't always expect people to come to us or to even know like what resources are available to them all the time. And I think a really tangible way of doing that is starting within like the Black student unions that exist, or also like I grew up in Winona, Minnesota. There were maybe like 5 Black kids that went to my entire school. We didn't have a Black student union. I honestly didn't even know what a Black student union was until like I went to college, but like trying to like I would go back to my high school and try and start one and try and bring that, like make those stories accessible and make that education accessible. And I really encourage people to do that within their communities as well. And then also within that, like empowering those students to use their voice to like express that like we want this education in our schools and we want it to be proper, and we want our sourcing to be like our Black history to be sourced from Black voices and Black authors. And like empowering them to organize sit-ins and rallies and disruptions. And when I hear my teacher is giving me misinformation, I'm going to correct it, and I'm going to be able to cite my sources, and making that information accessible to our students, I think is really important, and empowering them through it as well.
Thank you, Tay. Thank you so much for that. So 2024 is a big election year, as we all know. That's a big election year. And DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, reproductive rights, abortion rights. So many issues are going to be pushed on. We're going to hear so much about them. Black history, we're going to hear so much about that. But how can we as activists ensure that police reform remains a top priority in the 2024 election, addressing issues like accountability and community engagement? That can go to any of our panelists today.
Yeah, I will start the conversation on that, and I'm going to try to give a sermonette and not a full homily like Cameron. But to that point, I feel that what we need to do is that this is a really major election, and the first thing that we're dealing here. Let me first speak to New York. The city council just passed a new bill called the How Many Stops bill. I'm not going to speak too much on it, but it has now been a week or 2 or 3 weeks that it has been sitting on our mayor's desk, and there has been no movement on that.
It's been vetoed. It's been vetoed.
Never mind. I didn't see that. Never mind. Now that we know that it's been vetoed, I can say something else. That bill could have prevented so many other things from happening. Earlier last year, I went to Albany with a group of people to fight for ending qualified immunity. Qualified immunity is one of the darkest things that this country has. Qualified immunity, people don't know, people think that it's only for police officers. Qualified immunity is for anybody that works for the government. If you are a government official of some kind, may it be a police officer, an elected official, maybe just a regular IT person, you can be held accountable. And so what I think that we need to do is that we need to put people on the lines that are going to make sure that these bills are being put into place. Police brutality is still a thing. People don't think that it exists. Just because it is not on the national news does not mean that it does not exist. People are still dying at the hands of police. People are still dying. People are still being put in jail by corrupt judges. Judges are also are part of this and, and need to be brought up in the conversation regarding qualified immunity and police reform as a whole. The justice system needs a complete overhaul. And so with bills like that are now vetoed, that are sitting on desks with governors and mayors and presidents, this is another thing we have to be careful who the next president of the United States is. Now, I was waiting for Ashley to talk. The reason why I was itching in my seat before was because I was just thinking about convention, even though convention is in April. I was just saying, if this is so good, I can't wait for convention. But we need to be careful who's elected in 2024, because if we're not, Donald Trump is getting really nervous. And I don't know if we're going to go further into that before we close, but I know somebody brought up the election in the chat I was watching. We need to be very careful who is the next president in 2024. What is going on in the world is very bad for the president right now. And I don't know if I'm supposed to say that, but I'll say it. I'm not saying it for nobody, but it's bad. What's going on in the world, I'm not talking about just with Israel and Hamas. America has their hand in too much globally. And it is starting to affect us where we don't notice that it's affecting us. These things are happening in communities, and it's just really bad for the administration that is currently, because the people are saying what they want. And this is supposed to be an administration that has an ear for the people. And so far, what has been happening, at first, there was an ear and they were listening and things were happening. I'm not going to say that things did not happen. I think that President Biden, his first 2 years were very successful. Bipartisanship like never seen before. Even President Obama did not get the support that Joe Biden had. So let me acknowledge that. But now the rest of these 2 years are not looking so good. Every poll is showing that Donald Trump is getting a comeback. And Donald Trump is one of the biggest haters of police reform, of overhauling the justice system. This is the same justice system that is going after him. The attorney general had to get an extra security detail when she started going after him. District Attorney Alvin Bragg had to be moved away just because he brought up his name and brought charges against him. They had to move him away. So with all of that being said, and I'm closing, we need to really push leaders that are going to be having an ear for the people in police reform, qualified immunity. These are things that are really serious and that are pressing to us, because these are things that are going to affect us long term.
Christian, I thought you wasn't going to preach.
I wasn't, but then it came in and got the win.
Yeah, I think I'll take it from there. I definitely agree. And I'm
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I'm actually gonna loop in something I was gonna say from like the history piece to this policing public safety, then also like peace in the Middle East. Because they're all three related. So like to the point of history, in terms of, a lot of the Red Party not wanting us to talk about certain things. If someone doesn't want us to talk about certain things, it's because they plan on repeating it. Like, let's start, like, there's, like, with that, we know, with that evidence alone, that there are clear intentions of repeating it. And in terms of, like, the election season 2, it is easy for a lot of, I don't want to say a specific party, but it's easy for a lot of elected officials and politicians to win if the public is uneducated. If the people don't know where their oppression comes from and the systems and structurals that create and perpetuate their oppression, and don't see their oppression linked to the next man's because of their skin tone, and think that the person jumping over a gate or the person with a hoodie and a gun is the source of their oppression, not the 1% capitalists making sure that the minimum wage is $7. Like, they want us to be uneducated. So in terms of like the historical context of critical race theory and Black education and Black history stuff in America, like Black history and the journey of people that came from nothing, that were used to further the capitalist and business agenda that came from where we are now. Like, the story and fight of that came from fighting oppression and also fighting institutions and economic institutions that we have now. So like a lot of the times I say politically wise, and I think this is something that the Democratic Party needs to use more of. I know politicians are very caught in their ways and just like used to the game in terms of the way that politics is played. But what we're seeing now in terms of the Trump era is kind of like it's a good thing and it's a bad thing. Obviously, we know why it's bad, but I'm saying it's a good thing in the terms that Trump is running on what is called in the criminal justice word Southern strategy. And Southern strategy is basically, Southerners, this is just the quotation marks, but don't quote me, but basically the definition of it is like people that are uneducated, people that have kind of, embedded racism in their thought, and basically going to those people who are, I would say, economically oppressed, because it's a lot of times, they have the feeling of struggle in terms of, not being able to afford groceries, not being able to survive minimum wage, not having healthcare, all these different things. But basically what the Trump party and Republican party now is doing is using that voter basis and saying that the reason why you're struggling in the economic system in the lower, in a low income status is because of a person of color. So I think the Democratic Party needs to capture that voter basis in terms of, the people that are in like low income areas, in the South, and people call like trailer parks, like whatever the colloquial term is, but like that group has issues of oppression and struggle that's incongruent with like the Black party, with people of color. So I think like that's one part. And in terms of police reform, I think we need to capture that as public safety. I think right now the party is using the edge in terms of is using the narration of, public safety and crime, and saying like the answer to your public safety crisis is policing. Like statistically, we know that policing is not the answer to public safety, because it doesn't perpetuate public safety, doesn't solve for the roots of crime. That's a whole nother conversation in itself that we'll probably get into the question segment. But I think that we need to focus more on really defining, what public safety in America is, and really addressing some of the root causes, especially with our youth and mental health crisis that we see in post-COVID.
Thank you, Monet. Cameron?
I always love coming on these kind of panels because we just convene some of the most brightest young minds, and I love it because I learn a whole lot from talking like this with my peers. And to Christian's point, and I want to get to a little bit of what Monet said at the end, but to Christian's point, first on qualified immunity that was first introduced in 1967 by the Supreme Court, Justice Sonia Sotomayor, a sitting justice, has called qualified immunity an absolute shield against accountability for police officers accused of using excessive force. And as he just mentioned, it's not just police officers, any government official, but then you're looking at the fact that the Supreme Court introduced it, the Supreme Court can take it away. Now, that's one of the things that we need to be advocating for, that qualified immunity needs to be no more. Shout out to Ben and Jerry's, Ben and Jerry is always in Washington, D.C., fighting against qualified immunity. This is, in the words of our sitting justice, an absolute shield against accountability, not just for a police officer, but for anybody that it applies to. So we should be advocating, as police reform stays at the top of our list of things that we're looking for in this election, completely stripping away qualified immunity, because never have we seen it show up as a benefit to the people. We've seen it show up as a benefit to different and police officers use it the most. That's why it's always coupled with police officers, and many people don't know that it's any government official. But when you see the beneficiary of qualified immunity, most likely it's a police officer who used excessive force, and many times caught on camera, many times caught with evidence, many times it's proven that you've used excessive force, but because of something that is put in place, you get to be immune to the law. That's something that we have to continue to say and amplify over and over again, that qualified immunity needs to go. Then to Monet's point, who mentioned that for public safety, you don't start with police. Police are responders to a problem. By the time the police get here, the crime has been done, everything has been committed. These are responders. They're not preventers of crime, they're responders to crime, in my opinion. And so, but even still, we can use some kind of way. If the community policing becomes a thing again, I do believe that we can find a way to instruct police reform into public safety. There may be a way that it can coexist. In 2021, ECPS was introduced in Chicago, Empowering Communities for Public Safety. And in the 2023 municipal election, which I have to give a shout out as I'm on the NAN platform to the Reverend Al Sharpton, who allowed me as a candidate in the 23 municipal election to go on Keeping It Real with Al Sharpton and lay out my platform points as I ran for alderman of the 9th Ward. So shout out to Reverend Sharpton, who's always been an advocate. But we created that, and what that was is a community commission. I wrote it down so I don't get it wrong. A community commission for public safety and accountability. What it does is it's two parts. It's a 7-member citywide body that shapes Chicago Police Department policy for the whole community citywide. But then within Chicago Police Department, there are 22 districts that make up the city of Chicago. Within each district, not only do they have the 7-member citywide body, but each district then elected in that municipal election 3 residents that are in the community, not police officers, not whatever, residents that are in the community that are elected to hold office to then go to CPD and ensure public safety, local accountability, local level watching, so that you have in your district, you got regular residents that are watching what you do as police. And when we talk about police reform, the relationship between police reform and public safety certainly can be talked about. But when we talk about police reform in and of itself, I think we need to advocate for more councils like this that put our residents in front of our police to let them know we are holding you accountable. It's not just the fact of the young girl whose name escapes me, who, but for her video, we wouldn't have seen what happened to George Floyd. But at the same time, that was just a young girl passing by who thought, let me take my phone out. And by chance, we found that out. But if it's embedded in the Constitution of our states, it's embedded in the makeup of our city, that our residents are sitting and watching you in every district of the police, I think that we can begin to have a better conversation about police reform when you have people watching them. The police do a whole lot of stuff when ain't nobody watching. But when somebody's watching you, that's when we got results, because we saw what happened. Is the only reason why many times we've gotten results when it comes to one of the police officers across the country.
Thank you, Cameron. Alicia?
I just also wanted to add quickly from a health standpoint that we need to do more amplification of the 988 alternative line, where we are responding to crises of people that might be dealing with a mental health crisis versus necessarily a criminal or that requires police response. We've seen instances of police violence against people that have been dealing and having mental health issues. And I think that in these conversations, when we're talking about police reform, we also need to talk about the ways in which we are responding to crises and episodes of that as well. And that's working and putting pressure directly on government agencies to keep pushing this alternative out, and making sure people are qualified and trained to respond properly, so there can be more intervention methods happening in conjunction.
Thank you, Alicia. And thank you to Tay. Tay, Cindy, she had to jump off. She has another Zoom she has to do, but thank you for joining us from Minneapolis. Felipe, you have the next question?
Yes, everyone. So with the 2024 elections approaching, what strategies can the panel can bring to encourage youth voter registration and engagement, emphasizing the importance of this particular election and shaping the future?
Can I go real quick? I love this question. I think it's so important as we are, and I saw something else where we were talking about engagement on social media platforms as well. I think that we are, as millennials, and I think it's Gen Z, the one after millennials, to really utilize our digisphere and understand that this is a new way in which we consume information. So I think to that point, one, making sure that we are taking control as we are in this space and know what's going on of the information that's being spewed out. I also think it's important to make politics personal. And I say this all of the time. People don't understand the fancy jargon and like the Beltway talk that we hear every day, every other day from politicians, especially out here in Washington, D.C. You really have to make it personal to people so they can understand what they're voting for, because all they think is we are going down the same path of what a lot of people will say to be the lesser of two evils. And they're not necessarily understanding the differences in which one person being in office can affect their overall well-being and have adverse consequences than another person. And so I think that making it personal and making it focused on the issues that they care about is really, really, really going to help turn out young voters and ensuring that they're not, because you hear young people all the time giving credit to former President Donald Trump for giving out stimulus checks. And it's like, no, that wasn't necessarily a function of the executive branch. That was through Congress. Congress, no funding goes to any civilian, any citizen without being passed through Congress. Donald Trump just signed it. And because he signed it, he was able to take credit for it. So I think it's important also to be giving civics lessons as we're continuing this journey of ensuring that we are participating in the voting process and the overall civic engagement process.
Thank you, Alicia, for sure. Brenda?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo the point that Alicia made of ensuring that folks also understand, and even the younger folks understanding like what's going to be on the ballot, not just at the top of the ballot, not what's on the middle of the ballot, everything in between. And that might mean, you know, it's an opportunity. It's a great opportunity for us who might, you know, be a little bit older, be a little bit more seasoned in GOTV efforts to meet, you know, the youth now who might be voting for their first election, voting for the first time, you know, being personable with them and taking some time to even maybe learn what issues are important to them and connecting the dots. What might have connected with somebody, you know, 10 years ago who was 20, you know, and somebody else coming up now who's like 18 about to vote for the first time, you know, it's not the same. And so I think it serves as an opportunity for folks who have had experience doing GOTV or who are just getting in for the first time and really trying to encourage their peers to make it personable, kind of also take yourself out of the frame for a little bit and, you know, lean into what, you know, they're really saying. Because sometimes young folks might not even know exactly like maybe how to pinpoint certain issues. They might talk about a circumstance or, you know, a hot-bedded issue and not really knowing how to connect that back to, you know, somebody who you're going to vote for, who has, you know, who has the power to vote over that, you know, to represent you. I would also definitely echo the point around civics education as well. This is probably like one of my favorite things to do because it always teaches me something new about how to relate to young folks. I'm young, but I'm not young on a spectrum of like a new person who's a part of the electorate. So for me, I get excited like knowing what gets them excited about voting or what gets them mad about what's going on and how to help them translate that into ensuring that that is connected to how you vote at the ballot. And I think more folks have the opportunity to play within that space and to play that role within the space and encourage and make the young folks excited to not only do it, but do it to a point where they get excited to make somebody else excited about the process as well.
Thank you, Brenda. Monet?
Yes, I think on our end, in terms of organizations and other groups, you know, trying to push the vote, I think we need to start doing voter drives. I think we need to, you know, but doing that like by meeting people where they're at. So for young people specifically, I think we need to really have like voter drives not tailored to the traditional model, but voter drives tailored to like what young people actually want to go to and what would incentivize them to get out the house and get dressed and actually show up. So I think doing that through like fun, social networking events and really harping on like why we're voting. And I think we need to focus more on, yeah, executive is executive. And obviously that's the highest point of power that we're voting for, but it's really local politics that's affecting everything that we have, that's affecting your day-to-day, that's affecting little things. And I think that's something that people who don't specialize in the political realm wouldn't know. And that's not something we're taught to know because they don't want us to know it, because it's easier for them to remain in power for 100 years and do things behind the scenes if people aren't aware of how those things affect them. So I think really like harping on, the power of local elected officials and things within city, state, and even Congress. And I think also from from young people's point of view, I would just encourage people to get involved with their local organizations in terms of, if it is a specific issue, like Brenda said, find an issue that you care about and see what nonprofits organizations are on the ground doing that work. And that's getting you involved in, like you could go up to Albany, you could go help sponsor a bill, you could go help this very specific policy that you want to see and help talk to your local state official literally within a week, or even give, I know we're doing more of the calls, but I think making it more personable and forming it through relationships, such as people really getting involved on the ground. And even if they're not yet having maybe like a sort of voter turnout resource fair events kind of style would be good.
Thank you, Reverend Cameron.
I think the three young ladies have hit it right on the head immediately. I found out when I was running that it wasn't that young people didn't care. It was that they didn't know. And when you sat down, when I sat in corner stores, when I sat in barbershops and different things and had conversations with them and broke down these different things, there were and we're talking about high schoolers that had never voted before, and this would have been their first time voting. It's something to see them have an eye-opening experience. It's something to see someone's mind be blown and right in front of you and realize that I did not know that it was such like that. And I would tell them all the time, as much as we talk about the 2024 presidential election, as it was mentioned, I think Monet mentioned it, the power of local government. I would tell them all the time, the president of the United States is probably never going to walk down your block, but your alderman will. Your state rep may. Your congressperson, all of these folks on your local school council, many times they don't even understand that sometimes the issues that they're upset about are not so much so in the hands of the president. If you went to your alderman's office, you could get that rectified. If you went to the state legislature, knowing who your state legislatures are, they don't know what ward they live in, what state district they live in, what congressional district they live in, knowing how to climb from the bottom up instead of starting at the president. You need to be starting at the local level, working your way up to the presidency. In 2024, there's going to be 41 million voters between the age of 18 and 27 years old. 41 million in 2024, and that's just eligible to vote. That's not talking about those who are not yet registered, but those that are already eligible right now, 41 million, 18 to 27 years old. When we begin to have these kinds of conversations with them and let them understand what you're voting for, Reverend Jackson did it like this. He would ask them, how many, talking to a group of young people, how many of you know someone who has appeared before a jury before? Hands would go up and so on and so forth. And he said, now, if that was you appearing in front of a jury, would you want your fate decided by a jury of your peers or a jury of those who know nothing about you, who, could care less about you? Everyone would want it to be a jury of your peers, right? But only a registered voter can serve in a jury. Oh, I didn't know that. Well, and when you get into these situations, not knowing at the last minute is not going to be able to help you. You've got to be able to, like they said, get involved with these organizations. Again, if you're in New York, you ought to be at the Saturday morning action rally. You ought to be at the Saturday morning forum at Rainbow Push, learning about these things, learning about government from the bottom up. It doesn't start with the president. Many issues, you'll be surprised, you could get resolved never leaving your state and knowing where you fall on the map, where your state rep is, who's talking for you in the state house. Forget the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. Who's talking for you in your state capitol? Who's your state senator talking for you right now? Who's the alderman representing you at the city council meeting? All of these different things will again begin to let people know that politics are more local than you ever thought it was. But with that number of 41 million, they need to also know, because many young people think that their vote is just a drop in the bucket and it doesn't count. But when you put one with 41 million, you can get to where you are going. And we just have to be able to articulate this in a palatable way to young people, because the attention span is short. You talking about Social Security, that's 40 years down the line for me. You got to start with something that's going to affect me tomorrow. And then I can begin listening and understanding as I digest more and more.
Thank you, Reverend Cameron. Anyone
Can
else
I
want to
just
add to
say
that
one,
answer?
can I say one thing? I think it's important to also tell stories of success. A lot of times people don't like to engage because they feel like, to Cameron's point, it doesn't do anything. They're just a number in a hat. I think telling stories of success and telling stories of triumphs, personal stories, and stories that connect the dots for what's personal to them can also help. I know a lot of young people were disappointed with how everything played out when it came to student debt. I was disappointed. I have debt. But I also think it's important to share the avenues in which that can still be explored, to give people hope and to understand that, you know, we can only hold, I think Cameron said it, or maybe it was Ashley. I don't remember who said it, but it was something to the point of holding the right people accountable and ensuring, and that goes back to the civics lesson, ensuring that people know what ways to engage based on the issues that they care about. So it's not even necessarily a function of the president always. But in this case, you know, once the Supreme Court shut it down, what are the functions of the president? What are the functions of Congress? What are the functions of the different avenues of government? And who do we put the pressure on to make sure that they're doing everything to the fullest extent of their powers to ensure that we're getting the things that we voted them in on? So I think telling those stories and reiterating those things will also help make it so people won't feel like they're just blindly putting their trust in someone that continues to disappoint them.
Thank you, Alicia. Usman, I saw your hand up. Do you still want to add to that?
Man, these people preaching. I'm just listening now. I'm here as a student.
So no? You sure? Okay.
That's
all
what
right. So this is going to be our last question tonight. There's no questions in the Facebook. There's been all commentary, and we thank everybody from across the nation from watching and for adding your comments. Thank you so much. So I'm going to have some help reading this. We're going to take it back to like we do on Huddle Mondays, and we're going to bring an article into this. Felivi and Patrice are going to help share the article, and it's about Jonathan Majors and See the God, a post that See the God made, and it's for the entire panel. It is 6:58, so I know we're supposed to end at 7, so we're probably going to end like 7:10, 7:15. Hopefully the panelists can still stay with us. If not, just let us know. And Felivi and Patrice, I'm going to add you on. And I'm also going to show the picture so that everyone watching knows exactly what we're talking about. And for Levy and Patrice, when you're ready, take it away.
Patrice, would you like to start with reading it? Okay, I'll start. All right, Charlemagne the God reacts to Jonathan Majors' inspired MLK Day party flyer. Jonathan Majors, whoa, why is it not? Okay. Oh, it's actually blocking me to read the rest.
Okay, I can do it. So Jonathan Majors has become one of the most talked about celebrities in the first 2 weeks of 2024. The Creed 3 actors interview with Good Morning America inspired countless online jokes. A New York jury convicted Jonathan Majors of reckless assault and harassment. The criminal case stems from a March 2023 domestic dispute with his ex-partner, Grace Jabari. His sentencing is set for February 6, 2024. While speaking with ABC News journalist Lindsay Davis for the televised sit-down, Jonathan Majors compared his girlfriend, Megan Good, to late civil rights movement icon, Coretta Scott King. She's an angel, Majors said about Megan Good on ABC. She's held me down like a Coretta. I'm so blessed to have her. The relationship is still fresh, but I think I found her, end quote. Jonathan Majors' statement referencing Martin Luther King Jr.'s wife began trending as social media users created memes about the comparison. The Breakfast Club host, Charlemagne the God, even shared a party flyer featuring Majors for an MLK Day event. Whoever made this has no idea that heaven has a right to refuse policy. Let's discuss, Charlemagne the God wrote on Instagram. The image also listed See the God and DJ Envy as hosts for the party. Additionally, the flyer read, all Corettas in free before 11 p.m. Martin Luther King Jr. Day takes place on the third Monday of January every year in the United States. The federal holiday celebrates the January 15th birthday of the assassinated Baptist minister and political activist. So basically, I wanted to show the picture of the post. If you have Instagram, you can look it up yourself and see the guy's page. But long story short, JT, I think he's in the chat too. Basically, he showed me this on King Day, and I thought it was crazy because I felt like it was disrespectful, to say the least, to King Day. See the guy, we know him, he's a friend to NAN. I know he knows the King family as well. So I was surprised at the end of the day. I know he jokes about different things, but I was surprised that he would take that, I don't know, just take the stance to even make that a joke. As far as he's going in his career, I just thought it was irresponsible. That's my personal opinion. This is not Nan's opinion. This is my opinion as Ashley. And I thought it was reckless. And I just felt we need to have take more accountability about basically who, I don't want to say leaders, but those who are in certain positions, expectations. Some in the commentary under the picture, some disagree with him, some bashed him, some laughed, some thought it was a joke. But I just thought it was interesting. I wanted to discuss it briefly. I know this now is 7:01, but I just wanted to hear your opinions. Do you think that we should be focusing on things like that? Do you think we should hold him accountable? Should he be called to be canceled? Is it not that serious? Should we learn to laugh a little? Or like, what does it say on King Day in 2024? Someone who's considered a Black leader to some, especially in media and entertainment, will post that as his only King Day post. I don't think he posted anything else except a Boondocks or something, some speech that was also a joke, basically, of Martin Luther King. So what do you have to say? I'm going to look for the picture just so I can share it with those who are looking on Facebook.
So hi, can everyone hear me? I dropped for some reason. You can hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
So this is Patrice. So I just wanted to hop in on the comment in reference to See to God. I know Ashley asked for me and for Levy to start it out. But
yeah, one second, Patrice, though. We read the I wanted you to help read the article. So 1 second for the commentary. We want to start with the pennies. Go ahead, Christian.
Okay, to start off this conversation, to me, I don't think it was funny at all. And when I had to do some real more digging into this to really understand. And to me, at first I was going back to the Cat Williams interview because Cat Williams had made a comment about it in his interview. And something about he's not going to be like Jonathan Majors and have him running down the street from white women. And I said, what does he mean by that? I didn't really pay attention to the Jonathan Majors thing before all of that. But what stuck out to me was that he said that he had found a Coretta. And what I came across was an article that the FBI, along with who was that? J. Edgar Hoover, who was the FBI agent that the FBI director that we all know, that was very instrumental in spying on Dr. King. Now, the FBI, the CIA, all of these major agencies, we already know that they spy on us. But there were specific people during that time that they targeted. And something that was sourced was that Dr. King was abusive to Coretta. And when I read this article, I said, oh my God, he thinks that it's a joke. And so when I put it together, what I got from that was that this lady, to him, has some sort of power and is going to stick by him like Coretta Scott King stuck by him with Dr. King and whatever they said and all of that stuff. And I said, no, that's wrong. Because to be abusive to somebody, he has already been found on these charges that he has been abusive. That's one. And two, to make comments referencing to Dr. King and his wife, a legend in the Black community, is even more sad. Dr. King fought for Black people. He fought for poor people, and he just fought for things that normal people during that time were not really fighting for, which were more quiet. And for him to go that far, already dealing with so many things, and then when you have people, to Ashley's question more in depth, when you have people that are in positions of influence, we have to be very mindful when you're dealing with people in positions of influence that can deter the mind of other people. Young people are smart, but not everybody is on the level that some of us are on. All of my life, I've been told that I have an old soul. Cameron, you look like you've been told the same thing. And you know, I was talking to Ron. Ron thought that Cameron was 40 years old because of the way he carries himself. I said, Cameron is not 40, but he carries himself like he's 100 years old. People say the same thing to me. So long story short is this. My mind just said, you know what, this is crazy. But other young people would have went right along with this joke because they're not so cunning in their mind. They don't have the ability to comprehend certain things that me and Cameron and Felivi and Usman can understand on a more intellectual level. And so we have to be careful when you have people in power and positions of power that are able to do stuff like that and turn really serious conversations into jokes. Because to me, there is nothing funny about Dr. King. There is nothing funny about the work that Dr. King did. And the same thing for Reverend Sharpton, the same thing for Reverend Jackson, the same thing for all of our civil rights leaders and people of power that have had an indelible impact on where we are today. Dr. King gave his life and there's nothing funny about it. And Coretta Scott King stood by him no matter what Dr. King did. We don't know. I wasn't born. Thank God I wasn't born. I'll be like 100 years old. But I wasn't alive during that time. But they were. So they know what happened. So with all of that being said, and I'm done because I talked for 5 minutes, but really, it's nothing funny about that. And Jonathan Major should be ashamed. And Charlemagne the God should be ashamed too for backing that. And, you know, that's my take. Actually,
Thank you.
one
I just
minute.
want
I'm
to share
sorry.
the
One
screen
last
real
thing.
fast. Hold on.
Okay.
1 second. Can you guys see the screen? Can y'all see it?
Yes.
Okay, so this is basically what I was referencing in the article. This is See the God's post, and basically instead of Martin Luther King, it's Jonathan Majors walking in it. Just so everyone is aware. Anyone else want to answer it? I know Patrice wanted to share.
Yes, I wanted to jump in. Christian, that was a very well thought out analysis and a good one, but I don't think they were thinking that deep into it. I think it was based off of Jonathan Major saying, oh, he wanted someone to hold him down. And the fact that there's a lot of ignorance in our community, or there's not a lot of education in our community where people understand that Dr. King was not that long ago. People see these black and white pictures thinking Dr. King was back then, but his son is alive, his daughters are alive. And even Miss Dr. King, Dr. Bernice King, spoke about it like, hey, my mom was not a trophy wife, that my mom actually did this and did that, and she listed out her accomplishments. So I don't think we need to cancel anyone in this regard. We need to counsel them and we need to educate them. And if there's a further, something further that happens along with that, then we can start canceling people. But I don't think a lot of people in our community even saw it as, oh, like a disrespect, but rather than Jonathan Majors is looking for someone to stand by his side. And he first went out to look for that in a white woman, which was kind of weird to me, at least. If not a lot of us, it was weird to me. But then he found, or him and Megan Good, I don't know what type of arrangement they got going on. And then now he calls that her Coretta. Is like, that's not a title we just give someone. Coretta Scott King was her own woman, and she did what she had to do. And I think if we educate people and we give them the education of who our leaders are and what they've done, it would be a lot better.
Yeah.
Thank you, Usman. Patrice?
Christian and Usman stole my answers. They got to give me credit though. But thank y'all. I was gonna say the same thing.
Okay. Monet?
Yeah, I'm just gonna bounce off what Usman said too. I definitely think he intended it as a joke. I think most people took it as a joke. And I also think like in this generation, we have this sort of, and maybe it's just social media. I don't know if it's a generation, but we just got social media. But oftentimes we make a joke of everything as just a way of like coping with different things. But it's like at a certain point, it is like to what end? And I feel like the issue here more so is I would put it on like Jonathan Majors, because like for me, you know, I think one, just as a society, American society, we love to glorify the name of MLK Day, but I don't think a lot of us truly understand, you know, what that means and his impact and how his words and practices relate to modern day, when it comes to public safety, when it comes to bridging the gaps in our community, when it comes to our modern day civil rights movements of things of that nature, or even when it comes to issues, across United States lines, and even capitalist structure, like a lot of things that are embedded in our culture that a lot of us are, in agreement of, we don't see it as like, okay, like this is something that MLK stood for. We just see it as like, okay, I have a dream speech. And we could judge that from, lack of history, context, our education. But I think that's really where it stems from. And like for me, I think people with a platform such as Jonathan Majors, for you to say, I'm MLK and that's my Coretta, it's like, in what ways are you MLK? Like, what have you done for the community that would give you such a title? If it's someone like, even if, Reverend Sharp, someone like, who actually has done things to put himself on such a pedestal or in framework of such a light, that would make sense. But it's like, for you to outwardly say that in the middle of you having a very, very public platform, in the middle of this scandal, like what gives you that title? What have you done for the community? And I wouldn't say as far as canceling, but to say, okay, if you want to have that title, like, what does that mean? Now that you have this, like, what are you going to do to implement his actual practices and not just the, white painted fence of what people think what would he actually stood for? Like, how are you going to implement those practices in the community where you're from with the platform and resources that you have? So yeah, that's my thoughts with that one.
Thank you, Monet. Alicia?
I want to piggyback off of what Monet said, because I think it's important to understand that there's no way that you can be asking for a Coretta when you're not governing yourself like a Dr. King. And I think sometimes we laugh because things are just so outrageously ridiculous to even think. He even said, I remember he said, Dr. King, he said a Coretta, and then he said a Michelle in like the recording that initially came out. And it's just like you're implying that you are of the stature of these men. And because of that, you are seeking a woman to kind of match. But also, I want us to stop treating Black women, I think someone else said it, like trophy wives, as if that all they did was stand by their man and had no influence on some of the things that they practiced and they preached and they pushed for, both in conjunction and outside of their husbands. I really want Black women's work and characters to stop being diminished and dwindled down just to what it looks to be a housewife, because these women were on the front lines, as we saw in that picture, which is a picture aside from the Jonathan Majors piece that is real, where Coretta was on the front lines too, putting her life on the line just like everybody else. It wasn't just this thing of her just standing by and being docile. These were bold women who were also fighting the fight in conjunction with their husbands and with their people of the time. So this idea that and I also think we just need to stop platforming people that are irresponsible with the words that they put out. I think that Charlemagne the God has gotten such a huge platform to kind of be the voice of young people without actively being in these spaces to know what that voice needs to look like and how it needs to be fine-tuned. And so I think that we just need to do a better job at sometimes ignoring the people that are being irresponsible with their platforms and amplifying the people that are actively ensuring that information and the necessary things are being put out. Because no one's going to take someone serious when at 1 minute they're trying to talk politics and bring in government officials on their page, and then you're sitting up putting up Corettas in before 11. I mean, it's just it's only funny because it's outrageous. And in that case, it's not really funny at all.
Amen. Amen, Alicia. All right, we're going to hear from Reverend Cameron and then Brenda, and then we're going to get our final thoughts, which should be brief, and we're going to close out in prayer. All right?
Yeah, I don't want to take up a whole lot of time. I know the hour is far spent. The first point I would say is I don't like cancel culture. I don't think this is something that Charlemagne needs to be canceled for, as a lot of people don't need to be canceled for a lot of things. I think people just get in their feelings and they just feel like you can cancel somebody when, well, that is what it is. I don't think he needs to be canceled. However, I do, as Usman did mention, I do think he needs to be reprimanded. The comment, or rather the caption, was a real quote from Dr. King. I see what you were going for, but and you got this meme at the same time, and we love making memes out of everything now. You know, soon as something happens, the next day it's a meme, and now it's like, well, I want to share it too and everything. His intentions were great. It was just, that was the wrong time. Nothing can take the space of Dr. King. You can't put his caption, his quote under somebody else standing in his place. Like, do that some other time, or post that separately when you joking about it. But on King Day, and we're talking about a Coretta Scott King, first of all, for Charlemagne, again, just not the right time. He plays too much. He's an entertainer, though. I mean, that's the space that they're in. As for Jonathan Majors and the comment in and of itself that then got the meme made, that made Charlemagne post it, as Alicia mentioned, you putting yourself, bro, in a whole different category you ain't got no business in. Doc, you talking about a Coretta or a Michelle, you not a Martin or a Barack at all. For the sake of you upset about you being in the doggone media and oh, she held me down like Coretta. Coretta used to, well, Mrs. King used to be sitting next to the phone when her husband was somewhere fighting and doing all these different things in the times that she wasn't there, scared because she knew that one day she would get that phone call that her husband is not going to be there no more. She wasn't holding him down in the sense of, I'm just waiting for you to get home. She was hoping her husband would get home. It was not guaranteed all the time. It wasn't just the fact that, oh, a couple people don't like you. They was actively trying to kill him and her, where she heard people running on her front porch and had to take her and her family to the back because they bombing their house. So, Mr. Majors, with all due respect, although this respect that you did not give, I don't believe, this is apples and oranges, I believe. You going through something for whatever you going through. Maybe you shouldn't have been with the white girl in the first place. That's something that you got to deal with. You made that decision. But stop bringing our Black women into it, talking about, oh, like Alicia said, like all Black women do in a marriage is hold down the man. There are women who have had far more accomplishments than their husbands. And I mean, again, I just think it's very interesting. A lot of times, like she said, we're laughing about these things. We laugh to keep from crying because at this point, I mean, we need a Dr. King in 2024. We need a new power couple on the front line as a Dr. King and Mrs. King was. And for Charlemagne to post that in complete, it's just like you posted him right over Dr. King. So in honoring him, you disrespected him. But don't cancel him. Just let him know, bro, that wasn't the right time. Post Jonathan Majors on the 16th, but the 15th is about Dr. King. And as for Jonathan, I hope he gets the help that he needs. God bless him.
I also want to add, as keepers of the dream and people who are part of organizations that follow the King tradition, let's pray that this becomes another avenue where people learn about who the real Dr. King is, what Dr. King work was. Because I don't think Dr. King was a person of the 1960s, but his work, his ideas, his thoughts transcended time and space, and it's even prevalent to today. So if we look at his words, if we look at what he said, if we look at what he wrote, his books From Chaos to Community and things of that nature, and give those to our little kids, they will understand the importance of Dr. King, and you won't even start playing with that name.
I just wanted to add, it's a piggyback off of what Usman said earlier, where this was, in my opinion, definitely done in poor taste, but I think also Charlemagne has to like recognize the platform that he has, and it was the fact that you decided to do it on the day that even Coretta Scott King advocated to get it to be a public holiday, a federal holiday at that, was definitely done in poor taste. And I think this offers up an opportunity for Charlemagne to recognize where his platform can be used to educate folks. I definitely don't think it's a space necessarily to go ahead and cancel him, but it's definitely done in poor taste. And I think as Charlemagne has like grown to be seen as a leader in the space, like you got to recognize what your role is. There's a time and place for everything. The joke is not needed, especially in a time where you're constantly being fielded with interviews of, you know, what has the current administration done for the Black people? Like this doesn't add too well to the narrative of that. And so he just needs to recognize that because a lot of young people now, like you've been on the scene, using your platform in that way, for a couple of elections now, national at that. You got to recognize the platform that you have, and knowing that there's going to be new legions of new voters that are going to be looking to your pathway of why should I vote in the first place.
Drops mic, Brenda. Thank you so much. Does anybody else want to add to that? All right, closing thoughts. Closing thoughts as we wrap up. Please briefly add, hopefully if it's no longer than 60 seconds, share your closing thoughts about how you are personally expanding on Dr. King's legacy and how we can help support you and your organization. You make sure you repeat what organization you represent and your name, and how people can follow you, because people are asking in the chat, how do we follow them? How do we get in touch with them? So basically say your name, your organization, and how you expanding on Dr. King's dream, and how you are helping to ensure that there's equal opportunity for all those behind us to make their dreams reality. We can start with you.
Make sure Cameron goes last.
You said who?
Put Cameron last.
Go last. Goes last. I can't. They coming at you, Cam.
All right. So I'll kick it off. So again, my name is Brenda Morrison. I serve as a National Advocacy Chair for the National Urban League Young Professionals, which is one of the volunteer auxiliary groups for the National Urban League. It is made up of young professionals across the country in about 65 different areas that are focused around supporting the Urban League, who provides direct services in about 95 plus direct affiliates. And we provide support, but we also ensure that we're creating space for a new generation of young professionals to take an active role within their communities. And so the greatest way, if you have a person who fits within the age range and you're trying to look how to get them connected, you could definitely look up nulYP.org. That's nulYP.org. It will kind of direct you to a local chapter in your community. And if there's not one there, I would highly suggest for you to connect with your local Urban League. They're doing some incredible work, giving direct services, and there's great ways for you to also influence and inform your community within this upcoming election.
Thank you, Brenda. Usman?
Hello, guys. My name is Usman Diallo. And what I want to say is, let's not forget Dr. King. Let's remember Dr. King for who he truly is. Let's not try to romanticize him. Let's actually understand what he done and what he would advocate for or what he wouldn't advocate for. And also, I'm a proud product of NAN Youth Huddle. So what I would advise you to do is get your young people, if you're in New York City, or if you're not in New York City, you can go live stream it. They're at 106 West 145th Street, and the Instagram is NAN Youth Huddle. If you type that in, you can find them anywhere. And also, I want to plug in the college, the Youth and College Department. You can go to nanyouth.college. You can email if you want to work on some things and let's start some things, youth@nationalactionnetwork.net. And let's pray for peace in the whole world. Thank you.
Thank you, Us. Christian?
Yes, I'll go. See,
Oh, he got.
I'm not going to be long. I'll be 60 seconds, but you see, Us threw that little extra in there to get a little extra flavor, but it's all right. Okay, I am Christian Matthew. I am one of the newest members to National Action Network and Youth in College. I don't have a title yet. Ashley, tell me that later on.
Coming tomorrow.
It's coming tomorrow. Okay, there we go. But what I would close with this is that keep hope alive. I've been saying that all week. That's been, I don't know, that's just been ringing in my soul. Jesse Jackson, when he ran for president, that's what he said. That was his slogan, keep hope alive. And so I think that is what we need to do. We need to try to smile as much as we can and fight through this 2024 election because this is going to be a rough year. It's going to be a good year, but it's going to be a rough year at the same time. I've just been so happy to see, I don't know why, but then there's also been so many things that we have just been thrown at in just 2024 so far. So in my closing, in 2 seconds, also, it says, oops, to a little flavor. Don't forget to join us in April 10th through the 13th for National Action Network convention. I was about to say holy convocation for convention. So y'all join us, and that's it. That's it.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you so much. Next, we have Monet.
And thank you again to the NAN family for always being supportive of me and helping me a lot on my early New York journey, and for even having this panel today. My name is Monet Smith again. I am the founder and executive director of a nonprofit in Brooklyn that focuses on criminal justice reform, known as SJI with 2 I's, stands for Society's Justice Innovation Interventions. You can follow us on social media at SJI 2 I's Society's Justice. We focus on lowering crime and incarceration and providing public safety through a preventative lens, through youth development, helping kids find their passion, translating that to an economic and social mobility model, and then policy and advocacy, as well as corporate community engagement projects. So definitely tap in with us, and we're definitely in the fight with New York City and lowering crime and, you know, tackling what real public safety is, and, you know, with our current state of politics. The quote I'll end on is something I like to say, that we are all that we have, but yet we're all that we need. So definitely optimistic for this year up ahead. And yeah, we just have to stay active and not get bogged down and get some content in where things are, but just remain fighting, because we definitely have a lot more work to do.
Thank you, Monet. Alicia?
Yes, well, thank you so much, Ashley and Youth Huddle, for convening this space. I think this has been great. I am Alicia. I serve as a health and wellness policy advisor for the National Action Network, which I have the opportunity to be operating in the spirit tradition of Dr. King to promote a modern day civil rights agenda. So I will keep doing that through the lens and bring a nuanced lens to that work. But also, I just want to say that we are the ones we've been waiting for. No one is coming to save us. And throughout the course of history, almost every major civil rights movement has been led by young people, from SNCC to SCLC. And so I think it's important that we take that and use it as momentum to continue to build up off of the soil that they already laid for us. So I will close with that, and am excited to continue to be hard at work as we navigate this crazy year.
Excellent. Thank you, Alicia. And salute to you and all your work with NAN DC Borough for the beautiful Martin Luther King Day Breakfast 2024. It was amazing. You can check nationalactionnetwork.net for the highlights. But salute to you, and of course, Emily Riley for all your work. Brother Cameron Barnes, Cameron Barnes.
My NAN family, I love y'all for real. And I love these conversations every single time we do this, because I learn more and I take more with me back to the spaces that I'm blessed to occupy. Still serving as the National Youth Director of the Rainbow Push Coalition here in Chicago, and Associate Minister at New Faith Missionary Baptist Church. And what I'm doing to keep Dr. King's dream alive is just staying on the battlefield. And that means whatever fight is on the battlefield is the fight that I'm fighting at that time. So we got a lot of work to do. We need you to do it. I appreciate these spaces that help curate plans that help to go beyond just this. We're not the only young, bright leaders in the country. And so this curates space for us to create more of this, to coalition build. And I just love it. You can find me on Instagram at CAMB.8. I also put that in the Facebook chat and everything. Shout out to Reverend Sharpton. Love Reverend Sharpton. Shout out to Ashley and to Dominique and to Patrice and to Ebony Riley. All of those that are behind the scenes at NAN that don't always get the support and the recognition that they should get. Shout out to them, because they're doing a whole lot of great work. And I think with that, I still wrapped up before Christian. Wonderful.
Y'all are funny. Patrice, do you have any closing thoughts before we close out?
Yes, so I want to say I'm excited about the leadership that was on this call today. And I know that we've been saying it every Thursday, when DEI is under attack, what do? Stand up, fight back. But when our rights are under attack, what do, young people on this call? Stand up, vote, and fight back in 2024. Stay encouraged. Make sure you get people out to the voting polls. You must vote. Young people, y'all are going to be the one to lead us to do the right thing. Shout out to Ashley Sharpton for always being the visionary. Shout out to JT, Dominique, everybody, all of the leaders at NAN. Thank you, Reverend Sharpton. Thank you, Attorney Hardy. Young people, is on y'all. When our rights are under attack, what do? Say it in your houses. Stand up and
Right
fight.
back.
There we go.
Thank you, Trees. Dominique, JT, any closing thoughts before Felipe closes us out? No? Dominique, JT?
I'll be very quick. I just wanted to say it's been a phenomenal just experience just being here with all of you young people. You inspire me. You are so amazing. And I just look forward to the continued conversations and the continued action that we will have together. And for those of y'all that are listening and watching us on Facebook, I hope that you definitely are inspired as I am, as I was tonight. And please get involved. And in the words and spirit of Dr. King, we must be active in our work. And so if you can't identify what you personally as an individual are doing to progress our people forward and to do something in terms of what you're fighting for and standing for to progress change, you're doing something wrong. So we hope that you not only watch us and listen to us and be involved in watching, but you also take action and join us in this fight, because I know that, as everyone has said, the young people are alive, well, and active, and we want everybody to join us and to be a part of that action. So be active, be intentional, stay woke, stay alert, stay encouraged, and stay educated. No justice, no peace. Thank you, Ashley, for your vision, and thank you all for joining us as well.
Thank you to everyone again for joining us tonight for our first virtual panel of the year with NAN's Youth and College Department, From Dream to Action, Navigating the Present and Shaping the Future. Thank you to our panelists. Yeah, I dealt with, it was, a lot of logistics, it was changing after a while, but thank you so much for joining us and for your patience and for coming and dropping gems and your knowledge with all those who are listening. Thank you to our viewers. Thank you to National Action Network and Reverend Sharpton for allowing us to share on the platforms and just for valuing young people's voices and valuing our advocacy and always making space and room and supporting us. Thank you so much. You can find out more. Huddle is back. We were off for the last 3 weeks. Huddle is back every Monday. We will start back this Monday at 6 p.m. Our first huddle of the year 2024. And we're going to be talking about our agenda, starting with how we spent King Day. And like I mentioned with Alicia, we started with the DC Borough, the King Day Breakfast 2024, and then the Public Policy Day Forum in New York City. You can see that on NAN's website, NAN's Facebooks, and YouTube. You can get all the charges you need, all the actions, everything you need is on NAN's website. We also went to New Jersey. There was also efforts in in Detroit, in California, and I believe also in Florida. So we were all over the move as we should be, as far as we are in the Kingian nonviolence tradition. So we have to make sure that we do our diligence, not just on King Day, but every day. And we took the day on and we didn't take the day off, and I respect that. Of course, thank you to our partners with National Urban League, Brenda Morrison. Thank you so much for joining us, and congratulations on your new stead. Monet, SJI, thank you for joining us in your partnership. Cameron Barnes, Rainbow Push family, thank you for joining us. We follow in tradition of Reverend Jackson as well, of course, as we do as Reverend Dr. King. So thank you so much for your leadership. Christian Matthews, he is one of our newest and youngest and brightest young leaders, not just in New York City, but across the nation. He will be joining our staff as one of our assistants and as directors, but we'll be announcing that formally. But thank you so much, Christian, for not just showing up, but you prove true every time I see you. You're on, you're advocating, you're helping, you're serving, and service is power here. So thank you for showing up and showing out. Felipe Dosa, you have the final words on this call before we end in prayer. Thank you. Sorry, before you go, but thank you for your leadership. Usman, you just resigned because he's stepping up to a bigger position. I can't announce it right now, but congratulations to you on what you're doing and this year. And Felipe Dosa, thank you for your national leadership, for all you do. This will be an important year, not just because it's an election year, but it's important for all of us as a people going forward. We've been in the midst of a transition, and I won't get to preaching. I'll do that on Monday because it's 7:35 and we have been on this call for 2 hours. But we have to make sure that we are on deck and not sleep. We are not just talking, but taking action, as this is the National Action Network. So we don't just want to huddle up. We want to huddle up and take action on what we're doing and not just sleep and dream, but make those dreams reality. So let's go forth with that, and let's go forth. For Levy Dosa, we need your last remarks. And Christian, you're gonna close us out in prayer. Thank you so much.
First, I want to say for all of us, we should definitely go back and do more research on Martin Luther King. Actually, on MLK Day, I had an opportunity by 100 Black men. They asked me to do basically a research on him, especially during his time at Morehouse. And here at Morehouse, there's it's called the Martin Luther King International Chapel. It has over 500 articles of stuff from Martin Luther King. I was even able to see his transcript at Morehouse. It was very interesting because he had a lot of C's, but that's a whole different conversation. But just to tell you to constantly keep doing research, we have to keep learning from the past. But I want to leave us with just to everybody, please reach out. Let's really work. We had a couple ideas in here, and I don't want it to just, we talked about it and keep it pushing, whether it's just AP history or everything. The point is of these conversations is to come, we're talking, and then we execute. And so I'm open. I've already worked with many of you guys so many times before, so this isn't nothing new, but for us to just keep going and keep working. So I'm here. I appreciate all of you all for coming for this panel, and I can't wait to see the work that we do moving forward.
All right. Now we're praying. All righty. Now let me put my minister's hat on. Let us pray. Father, we thank you for this time and this opportunity. We thank you for everybody that has collectively come. Now, God, I pray for favor and increase on every panelist that is a part of this conversation. Thank you for allowing them to take this time out of their schedules. Now, Father God, whatever strength and virtue has gone out of us, God, replace it 100 times and 10 times fold. We thank you for Reverend Al Sharpton. God, we ask that you will continue to cover him from the crown of his head to the soles of his feet, that God, you will be a hedge of protection around him and let your angels cover him 24/7. Thank you for Reverend Justin Jackson and to all of the other civil rights leaders, Mark Morial, the National Urban League. We thank you for everybody that has joined. Now, kind Father, we ask that as we leave this place, but never from your presence, that God, you will take us to our various destinations safely if we're not already there, but that God, you will be with us and give us the fortitude and the gratitude to continue to go forth. And we ask all these blessings in your son, Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I'm done.
Amen, amen, amen. Thank you again. Thank you, Christian. Thank you
You're
to
welcome.
all of our panelists. Again, make sure you tune into National Action Network at 9 a.m. for the Saturday Action Rally tomorrow morning. All the panelists, make sure y'all tune in. That should be regulars, and also Politics Nation at 5 p.m. at MSNBC. Make sure you join us for Monday, 6 p.m. Huddle, 6 p.m. Eastern, every Monday, and then next Monday is our Huddleversary. Thank you again to our panelists, and this will be available on YouTube as well. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Yeah.